This episode is brought to you by Netflix. 3 couples, 4 vacations, a lot to unpack. Watch The 4 Seasons, a new series starring comedy favorites Tina Fey, Steve Carell, Will Forte, Coleman Domingo, and more in a hilarious and heartfelt love letter to long-term relationships. Based on the original Alan Alda film. Watch The 4 Seasons, May 1st, only on Netflix.
The Red Apple Media Podcast Network presents This is Protecting America. Now, here's Emmy-winning journalist Rita Cosby.
Welcome to another edition of Protecting America. I'm Rita Cosby. President-elect Trump says that he will focus on securing the border and beginning deportations of criminal migrants on day one back in office. So how much of a mess is he inheriting? And how will this process keep our country safe get carried out? Joining us now is Ron Vitiello. He is a former chief of Border Patrol and also retired acting ICE director. Ron, great to have you here.
Rita, thanks for inviting me. Appreciate it.
How big of a mess, or a disaster, I should say, is especially our southern border?
Well, we've gone through the last almost 4 years now, the Biden-Harris administration, where we've had the worst surge on the southwest border of illegal migration than we've ever seen before. On top of that, you've seen, hundreds of thousands of Americans in the last couple of years in a row who have died from fentanyl poisoning. We know the cartels are making money hand over fist under this administration because there's an effect of a catch and release policy at the southwest border. So people are coming out from all over the world, and after a brief stay with CBP, they're being released all over the United States. They put this executive order in place, about 6 months ago now, and they said that they were going to establish a legal pathway. And what they did is they moved that illegal traffic from the border to the ports of entry and through airline flights all over the country of people who essentially wouldn't qualify if they came to the border and asked for permission to come in. And so they moved the illegal traffic to what they call a legal pathway, but it's really an abuse of the parole system. So the new administration, the Trump administration, although I'm grateful that president won because he has established his credibility to secure the border and help and give the men and women of the front line of DHS and the Border Patrol the tools they need to succeed, there is going to be a lot to do to cover over on the number of illegal aliens that are now in the United States in every city and town, plus secure the border, begin again to shore up where we need infrastructure like wall and roads and access, having enough agents to do the work that they're doing, and then make this problem smaller, reestablish the policies that were in place under Donald J. Trump, where he led to 50-year lows in activity of illegal migration across the southwest border. So make the problem smaller for the front line, give them the opportunity to rescue people who are being trafficked, give those agents the opportunity to seize more fentanyl in between the ports of entry, and give them the opportunity to find criminal conspiracies that are going on right now. And for most of the last 4 years, they've been overwhelmed by the traffic at the southwest border. And so they're not able and do not have the tools to end this, cycle of people coming from 150 different countries into the United States. Basically, if you have enough energy in the third world to make it to the U.S.-Mexico border, you have an 85% chance of being released by federal authorities. And that has an impact across the country. And it also puts people that are in the pipeline in danger. We've heard about the 300 to 400,000 children that came to the border without their parents and were let into the country, and our own government has no idea where they're at. We do know that we've found some of them in being trafficked in the labor scenario, and we know they're being trafficked in sex and other scenarios. And so even people who are, ostensibly coming here for a better life are being taken advantage of in the worst way by corrupt governments and ruthless smugglers.
You talked about a lot of important stuff there, Ron, like, for example, the flights. It's really sort of a shell game, right? They said, okay, we'll kind of take the pressure off here and we're going to fly them in. And in fact, those flights, they kept private and secret. It wasn't until sort of the whistle was blown and there was video. But for the longest time, they denied they even were taking place.
Right. And it was rife with fraud. They had to shut the program down for a couple of months because they realized that one sponsor had brought in like 250 people, like one person sponsored 250 people or more than that. And so it was rife with fraud. It's an abuse of the parole system. I didn't do a lot of paroles as an immigration officer, as a Border Patrol agent in my career, but parole was very specifically, it was trained and operated in a very specific way. It was supposed to be done on a case-by-case basis. It was supposed to be done for humanitarian reasons. So think about someone who needs an emergency surgery and it comes to the border and asks to get let in to get better health care, because they'll die otherwise. That's a humanitarian parole. And then the other paroles are supposed to be in the interest of the United States government. So think about somebody who is a witness against a cartel member in a conspiracy case. We're going to parole that person in. We don't give them status in the United States. We let them come in, testify in court, and then let them go back to where they came from. This administration has abused that authority. And if you come from 5 of the certain countries, then they're just going to let you in on a parole. And that gives them parole status for 2 years, but they're just as illegal as the people who are jumping over the wall at the southwest border.
Choosing a bottled Starbucks Frappuccino drink that's all flavor and just 100 calories? Easy. Choosing between creamy vanilla, double chocolate, and sea salt caramel flavors? A little harder. Try the delicious new Starbucks Frappuccino light drinks. Look for them wherever you buy groceries. Start with Starbucks coffee.
Last week was our first playoff game, and my plaque psoriasis was so itchy under all my gear. Sometimes just thinking about scratching could take me out of the moment. And then my doctor told me I could get clearer skin with a pill called Otezla.
Otezla apremilast is a prescription medicine used to treat adult patients with plaque psoriasis for whom phototherapy or systemic therapy is appropriate. Otezla can help you get clearer skin after just 4 months.
Okay, ready for the next game. Talking to my doctor about a pill was a total game changer.
Don't use Otezla if you're allergic to it. Get medical help right away if you have trouble breathing or swallowing, swelling of the face, lips, tongue, throat, or arms. Severe diarrhea, nausea or vomiting, depression, suicidal thoughts, or weight loss can happen. Tell your doctor if any of these occur and if you have a history of depression or suicidal thoughts. Live in the moment. Ask your doctor about Otezla. Call 1-844-4-OTEZLA or visit Otezla.com for prescribing info about cost, and more.
Also, I can't even imagine just how much pressure all these migrants at this voluminous level are affecting the morale of agents. How are the border agents handling, I guess, what they're dealing with now? And there were reports before the election that a lot of them, Ron, were planning to quit if Kamala Harris was to be elected. I bet they breathed a sigh of relief when they heard that President Trump won.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's a lot of enthusiasm, smiles all around, because they know that help is on the way with Donald J. Trump in the White House and the Oval Office supporting their efforts to protect the rest of the country. And so that's why we hire these young men and women. You look at a recruiting video for CBP and the Border Patrol. It's a bunch of agents out in the desert, running and chasing and on their ATVs, on their horses, protecting the border, patrolling the border, arresting smugglers, saving people from being trafficked. And for the last almost 4 years now, they've had to deal with a humanitarian crisis where thousands of people every 24 hours have come across the border. And these agents know that some of these people are being trafficked, that they're being abused, that they're being exploited. But the job for the last 3+ years at the southwest border is to put them in the pipeline for release as quickly as possible, because the government itself says that 85% of them are going to be released at the border. And so agents, it's demoralizing. It's not what we hired them for. It's not what they want to get paid for. They want to protect us. And so another 4 years of this, I don't know why anybody would stay under those conditions. And so they're very enthusiastic, and they know that, help is on the way starting January 20th.
You talked about the 300,000 missing kids. It's always so stunning to hear that number. And yet, during the election, I don't even think we ever heard Kamala Harris talking about it, because it would clearly draw attention to the problem they created in many ways at the border. What is happening to those 300,000 missing kids? What happens to somebody who gets lost in the pipeline and they're a minor?
Probably the worst things that you can imagine. Like I said, we know of cases where children were found on the night shift of factories here in the United States. 14-year-old women, working in a factory on the midnight shift. So that's the labor trafficking case. We know that sex trafficking is up, thousands of percent because of the volume at the border. When you have that kind of chaos, the men and women who are putting the folks into the system. Think about when someone gets booked at a police station, at a Border Patrol station, it's the same thing. They come in, you take the biographic information, you take their fingerprints, et cetera, and you do a short interview to find out the circumstances of their entry, et cetera. That when you're doing 1,000 of those a day, you do not have the time, to dive deep into their background and try to find out whether they're being trafficked or not, whether they're children or whether they're adults. It's a very difficult scenario that these agents are put in. They do find and rescue people all the time, but when the volume is so extreme like that, they can't do the quality work that we would want them to do that would actually save people. And so, yeah, these children that are in the pipeline, you think about it, they come here for a better life, but also think about these gangs that we know about in the United States, like MS-13. They have an endless supply of recruits that have come across the border in the last 4 years. These kids are, with their parents or without their parents, have left home for ostensibly a better life, and they're picked off by the very gangs that destabilize their own countries. And so not everybody in the pipeline gets a better opportunity, and certainly these kids are exploited in terrible ways.
And it seems like that is going to be really hard to track down. Tom Homan, of course, who's going to be the new border czar, he was saying it's much more difficult to track these kids down because they don't use credit cards. There's not these transactions that you can sort of try to trace and track the person down. It's a lot harder, isn't it, when it's somebody who's a minor who doesn't have the financial footprint for an investigative purpose to locate them?
Yeah, it's going to be a lot harder. Again, they're going to be in places where some of them are not going to want to be found. The people who are exploiting them are going to hide them from the public, and those kinds of things. It's going to be it's going to be very difficult for the front line to find these children. But I'm glad that it's on the priority list. There's a lot to do in a short amount of time. But having somebody in the White House, somebody like Tom Homan, riding herd on the apparatus to make sure as the borders are, things are getting done and the front line is getting the tools and the equipment that they need to do their job well. I'm glad that these children are part of their priority list of securing the border, deporting the criminals that have come in, having a deportation effort that covers down and corrects the 20 million plus people that are here illegally, starting with the criminals, and then finding these children all, try to do all that at the same time. It's very difficult, but there's no question in my mind that people like Tom Homan and Donald Trump, are dedicated to saving these kids and protecting the rest of us.
Are you astounded at the resistance so far from a number of sort of Democratic mayors and Democratic governors who have said, no, you will not be able to deport anybody in my community? That's going to be a fight.
Yeah, it's very disappointing. I guess I wish I could say I was surprised, but you talk about a governor like J.B. Pritzker. This is a guy that's lived in luxury his entire life. Whether he was a self-made man or he inherited a bunch of money, he's a very successful person. He became the governor of Illinois. His children and his grandchildren are never going to compete against individuals from the third world to be on the economy in the United States. His family has generational wealth. It costs him not a dime to have, thousands of illegal aliens in the United States because he doesn't live in those kind of neighborhoods. And so it's very disappointing that these elected officials who are supposed to be, swearing an oath to protect their constituency would rather stand up for the illegal aliens in the United States. And that's one thing. But you're talking about illegal aliens who then get arrested in local jurisdictions for committing crimes against the rest of us. It really makes no sense to me that they would stand behind, the idea that it's not a sanctuary for illegal aliens. It's a sanctuary for people who are in the country illegally who also break other state and local laws. And so it's very frustrating to see that. And then coming out and, getting in front of the podium in front of the press and bragging about how they're not going to cooperate with the new administration. It's sad. It's sad to see it because we deserve better in our elected officials, the people we put our faith in, and the people give their assent to be, the governor or a legislator or, a city councilman. It's sad to see it.
It definitely is. And are there things that can be done that Tom Homan can use? I mean, one of the things he has said is, get the heck out because we're coming, essentially. And he's also talked about sort of, I think it's USC 18, Section 2, the code that essentially says, you know what, do not aid and abet criminals. In other words, you are helping them if you're hiding them, if you're harboring them. Do you think it's going to come to that?
Well, there is a way, I think, with the resources of the Justice Department and some leverage, through grant programs and other restrictions, that we can incentivize the people who want to help us in the state and local context or help the government, do these deportation efforts, protect the cities, and regulate the traffic of the number of illegals that are in the United States. So there might be an incentive package that they should think about, and then also a leverage. Get the Justice Department to sue some of these cities for not cooperating, restrict the grant money that we as taxpayers provide, for programs in every city and town in America. And so, between requesting help and inspiring people to do the right thing, and then when they don't, hold them to account by restricting some of the funds that the taxpayers are giving them every year.
Are there things, too, even legally, even beyond that, like saying that they maybe are aiding and abetting? Are there things that if for some reason they still say, no, we're going to protect this person, even if, maybe they have some very serious convictions on their record, are there things that legally could be done to really crack down? I mean, there's a chance, obviously, when President Trump comes in, he'll appoint the U.S. attorneys. So he certainly could have the leverage even of the law to say, you know what? You are breaking the law by harboring this person who has a known rap sheet.
Yeah, they're in effect flouting federal law, right, and the supremacy of the U.S. government in some areas, especially around immigration. And so, yeah, I would love to see somebody like a Pritzker, like somebody file charges either in the class action or the Justice Department itself, bringing charges against state and local officials who refuse to cooperate or do things to harbor. I mean, that's clearly against the law. And so, if they step over that line, we will definitely have a Justice Department and a White House that'll back the play of a U.S. attorney who files charges in a case like that.
How tough is it going to be to find some of these folks? They seem to have at least a list or at least an idea of some, because we've heard, Ron, like that they were saying about 400,000 convicted criminals. There's another 200, I think, that 100,000 that have pending charges. So it seems like they at least have the names of them. Maybe they don't have the location, or maybe they have a good sense of where they are. But you would think that it's still going to be a complex project trying to locate them, trying to get them, right, and then trying to deport them. How big of a complex operation is that going to be?
It is complex. It's going to involve every city and town in the United States, but there are ICE officers, enforcement removal operations that do fugitive operations each and every day. So they're out there right now as we speak, assigning targets to their teams, locating these people who really don't want to be found. And some of them have a very small footprint as it relates to, gas and oil bills and telephone bills and the kinds of things that most Americans have, your footprint in society. And so it's not easy work to do to locate them. You have to, take them into custody safely for the officers that are involved, safely for the community and the individual, and then put them on a path, whether it's to an immigration judge or a path to removal if they've already been ordered by a judge or they're deportable for other things. And so it's difficult, complex work. If they want to do it at scale, there are not enough men and women in ICE to do, thousands and thousands a week. And so assistance from the state and local context in the 287G agreements, which is a legal contract that the government can sign with state and locals to help in the immigration enforcement context. And potentially, the president and Tom have talked about, using military assets to aid in the effort overall. I think that's got a lot of potential. As a Border Patrol agent and as a, somebody that was at the headquarters for a while, we sent several requests to the Department of Defense to help us do things on the ground, monitor the border, monitor the sensors on the border, build roads and fencing and wall. And so the military has helped the Department of Homeland Security quite often in my career. And so having them assist in logistics, maybe building detention centers, helping with transportation, airplanes, ships, et cetera. So there's a number of ways to scale the activity, and they're definitely going to need more resources and hands and feet in the work if they want to make a real dent in the 20+ million that have come in just this last 4 years.
You and I both know Tom Homan, who's going to be Trump's new border czar. Why do you think he's the right guy? He seems to obviously have great, tremendous will, great background. Will he be able to meet this very difficult moment, which it really is before him?
Yeah, he's the right guy at the right time. This is somebody who was a frontline officer, so he understands, the conditions that Border Patrol agents work in. He was in ICE before it was ICE, the INS. He's got a career as a frontline law enforcement officer. He worked in the headquarters context during several surges of illegal migration across the southwest border and was responsible, at that strategic level to make the enforcement removal operations work. And so he knows the work intimately, both from the frontline perspective and as a leader at headquarters. He knows how to communicate requirements to Congress and push back on some of their nonsense. So he has the strategic as well as the tactical picture. He has the confidence and faith of the U.S. president, Donald Trump. And so we know he's got all the tools he's going to need to succeed. And so I look forward to his success in protecting us.
You know what I also love, Tom, is a former cop. His dad was a cop. His grandfather was a cop. So he comes from a law enforcement family, too. Right.
No, he's a true patriot. He cares deeply about the men and women who do the work on the front line. And he knows the job at DHS is to protect Americans. And so, having, like I said, all the tools he needs, including the confidence and the support of a president, you've got nowhere to go but up as it relates to him being able to succeed in a lot of work that needs to be done to correct what's been going on the last couple of years.
How much do you think we will feel the effects of the borders, as you talked about, all the way up to 20 million people may have come in, or even more? Who knows? We don't know because of so many gotaways under the Biden-Harris administration. Do you believe we'll feel this for generations to come, the impact on our country?
Yeah, it's a very difficult situation and risk that all Americans have been put in by the Biden-Harris administration. We have people from 150 different countries. I was looking at the numbers yesterday. We have 73,000 or 78,000 people that have come here from China in just the last year. Just in fiscal year 24, we had 78,000 people from China. And only about 12,000 of those are women and children. So it's military-age men from China. Like, set aside all the threats of fentanyl and human trafficking, all the terrible misery that occurs in the pipeline. We have 78,000 people that we have no idea what their intent of being in the United States is. And they're from a country that we know, like worldwide, everybody knows that China is trying to take advantage and be the lone superpower. And would love to cast the U.S. aside. So what are all those people doing here? And so, yeah, it is a risk that goes well beyond the next administration. It is something that we'll be living with for a very long time. That's why we've got to adhere to the rule of law. That's why we've got to end the nonsense of sanctuary cities. And so when these people are found afoul of the law, besides being here illegally, they did something else, to get arrested in the city or a jurisdiction inside of the United States, they have to be turned over to the government so they can be removed. We need to get back to that. That's what was happening right after 9/11. Tom was part of the team that built the Secure Communities Program, and the Secure Communities Program was a program that anybody who was arrested in the United States who claimed to be born in a foreign country was immediately referred to ICE. And so when they were completed their requirements for criminal justice in the city or town that they were in, they were immediately referred for removal to ICE. And so, we have to get back to a situation where we don't allow, these Democratic politicians to pretend that coming into the United States illegally is not a crime, because it is. It's still on the books as a crime. The second time you do it, it's a felony. And then if you do that and then you are arrested in a local city and town, then you should be referred for removal. That's just the way it should be. It was that way for most of my career on the line. And we got to get back to a place where the American people have confidence that the government is securing the border, and we're preserving, the rich history of immigration into the United States for people who wait in line and pay all the dues and do all the right things to come in the front door. And we've got to close the back door, and we've got to give the American people confidence that the border is secured and sustainably secured. And, that's where we need to be in this country. And so that's a lot to do in one administration. So, we'll have to give the president and guys like Tom all the support they can get to be successful. And we'll have to remember how angry we were when we saw the tens of thousands of people coming across the border every day and being released at the border, because they're out there now. And the mandate from this administration, and part of what they ran on, was to remove the worst first. But then that still leaves, millions of people who are in the country illegally, some of which are intent to do bad things here.
Yeah, and like you just said, with such huge numbers, we don't know even the background of so many people. And sadly, as you brought up with 9/11, it only takes a few people to cause, hell on America. So we do need to go through the process of knowing who's here, vet them, make sure they're checked, make sure it's organized, make sure it's appropriate. And make sure that everybody feels safe and secure. Well, everybody, please be sure to subscribe and share to this podcast. This was such a powerful, such a timely conversation. And Ron, you have such great experience in this background, in this arena. And I just thank you so much for your service. You've done such great work protecting our country. And it's really great to have you here. And it's going to be interesting to see how all this shakes out, because clearly Tom Homan and, of course, President Trump and the rest of the Trump administration, the second term, they will absolutely hit the ground running day one. They have said this is a priority. The American people have spoken. They want this to be a priority. So I have a lot of confidence in the president and Tom to make it happen, but they have a lot of work ahead. And obviously all of us need to support them because it's a priority. Ron, thank you very, very much.
Well, Rita, it was great being with you. Thanks for the time.
And everybody, I'll be back soon with another great edition of Protecting America. And of course, you can catch me every weeknight, 10 p.m. to midnight on the legendary WABC Radio. This is Rita Cosby, and thanks for all you do to protect America.